Conflict in Sudan's Darfur region began in 2003 and has left 300,000 people dead, according to United Nations estimates. Some 250,000 refugees from the fighting have made their way across Sudan's western border into the neighboring country of Chad, where they're housed in 12 refugee camps. Freelance journalist David Axe traveled to eastern Chad earlier this summer, where he visited one of these camps.
The fighting in Darfur essentially pits the government of Sudan, which is an Arab-dominated government, versus disenfranchised African tribes in the western province of Darfur. So for about 5 years we've had sort of a intensifying guerrilla warfare that has sprawled over the border with Chad and has brought Darfur's problems into Chad. When fighting started in Darfur around 2003, many of the African tribes people who in the beginning were accurately characterized as victims of the Darfur crisis fled into Chad. So Chad has become the major base for the international effort to save Darfur, to save Central Africa. There is humanitarian work going on in Darfur. There are camps, there are aid workers, but Chad is a much, well, it's not safe, but it's safer than Darfur. And Western countries' diplomatic relations with Chad are better than with Sudan. So Chad is sort of the preferred base for aid groups and for international efforts to address Central Africa's problems. In other words, to address Darfur. There are around a dozen major refugee camps in Chad, most of them in the east along the border with Darfur, housing Darfuri refugees. The refugee camps are administered by the UN High Commission for Refugees, but the day-to-day management of camps in the east of Chad, along the border with Darfur, falls to a particular aid group. In other words, the UN has sort of subcontracted with one aid group per camp to do the day-to-day work in the camp. One of the biggest aid groups in Chad is CARE International, and CARE manages the Iridimi camp. So with camps that have been around for a few years, you don't see a whole lot of UN personnel. You see a lot of folks from whatever aid group is managing that camp. Iridimi, the CARE-run refugee camp in eastern Chad, about 20,000 people, founded along with the majority of those big eastern camps around 2004. It's representative of all of those big camps. The UN is doing, well, the UN and its subordinate aid groups are doing all they can to make these eastern Chad refugee camps self-sustaining. It's impossible. They will never be totally self-sustaining because there just isn't resources. But they can try. They can chip at the problem. So in Iridimi, CARE has a number of projects. You see new wells being drilled and new pumps installed to try to tease more water out of the water table. And so you have storage tanks where that water can be pumped into. It's not enough water, but it's a start. You have, in an effort to reduce the demand for firewood, because if you have no water, you have no wood, you have no firewood. In order to reduce that demand for a very scarce resource, wood, the CARE is handing out and building in the camp new types of stoves that use less wood. You've got 3 or 4 different designs of stoves, some of which are just imported or donated from foreign sources. Others are built in the camp. In Iridimi, there's a refugee workshop CARE set up where the refugees build these solar stoves. It's a foiled device that that concentrates the heat from the sun and can cook. It's not terribly hot or large, but you could, for instance, boil some tea in a solar stove. And so you've saved yourself a couple pieces of wood for the really important cooking. There's, in an effort to address the long-term wood shortage in Iridimi, the CARE has set up a tree nursery that has several tens of thousands of little seedlings, little tiny trees that they're hoping to grow up and plant in the camp, so that in 3-4 years, maybe the need for firewood from outside the camp, maybe we can reduce that. It's a gamble. There's so little water in eastern Chad that a lot of these little trees don't survive. It's one of many projects that CARE has in Iridimi, and it's typical. All the camps have these projects in an effort to do what they can to be more self-sufficient.
What is the water situation here? Is there enough water?
The situation of the water in this camp, it is the water is not enough for everybody for this place. So people of most of them, they are suffering about the water.
She has a 5-gallon can. She said that she was able to find cans early this morning. You have to come around 4 or 5 in the morning. That's when the pressure is the best. But then after that, everybody is pumping, and then it's much harder to feel there's no pressure. So what do you have to do if there's no pressure? And if you can't get the water? She says that if there's not enough water here or no pressure, you have to go to the well. But it's not a well like this one, it's a deep well. And those who have donkeys, you know what donkeys are? Well, you have to take your donkey and put the cans on the donkey. Those who don't have any donkeys, well, they have to go on their own. Is it difficult to get water from the other well? That's what they have to do when there's no more water here. It's all been pumped out. The ones who don't have donkeys, they take a can in their hand, and they have to do about 6 trips a day.
Chad is extremely dry, except when it's wet. There's a 3-month rainy season. Lately, it's been between around June and September, where Chad is inundated with heavy rain. This cycle of extremely dry and extremely wet causes all sorts of trouble for Chad and, well, for the whole region: Chad, Darfur, Chad, Sudan, Central African Republic. During the dry season, which is the majority of the year, very little rainfall, scorching temperatures, and essentially nothing can grow in most of Chad, especially in the east. And then during the rainy season, sure, you've got an opportunity to nourish some crops, but at the same time, the ground is so dry that the water can't easily soak into it. It's like sealed by the intense heat. The rainy season has been changing. Farmers in Chad and in Darfur say that the rainy season is coming later, and when it does come, the rain patterns are different, and some blame that on global climate change. Others say it's a regional pattern, but regardless, the effect is that it's getting harder and harder to grow anything in eastern Chad. Access to groundwater and to fertile land and to firewood is one of the root causes of conflict in the region.
They have just arrived from the place where we collect wood. They left at 2 a.m. this morning. They only come back now. It's 8. They drove 50 kilometers to fill up this truck with fuel wood. Where they get the wood, some people are collecting the wood, and as soon as the truck arrives, they fill it up. And then the convoy turns around, comes back to the camp. So now you have the refugees, the beneficiaries, who are in charge of unloading the fuel wood. So we're going to unload, and then the entire population, all the head of household, are going to come, and then we have an assistant who is going to distribute the wood. And this assistant is going to organize with her team the distribution of fuel wood. The truck comes once a month in our block. Each block receives one trip of wood per month. So they have to wait until next month for the next truck to come. What I should add is that each household is served according to certain criteria. That is to say, in each household, you have a household of size 1, size 2, or size 3. So these are people who are still using the old fires. They have not received yet the new economic ovens that save 80% of the wood. So the ones who use the old-fashioned way have 9 kilos of wood per month and per person. So if they have 3 persons in their household, they multiply 9 by 3 and they get 27 kilos of wood. So a 3-person household gets 27 kilos of wood per month. If it's a size 4 household, these have been served already. They've already received the new ovens. All the households that have received the modern oven get 6 kilos of wood per month per person. So you can see that a household with 5 people, for instance, you multiply 5 times 6 kilos, so 30 kilos per month per person for the whole household. The other aspect to mention is that truck. You see the heap of wood in that truck. I would say that's around 2.5 tons, 2-3 tons perhaps. What is that? It's Prosopis juliflorax. It's It's a plant. What is it for? You know that Chad is threatened by desertification. And since the refugees arrived on the eastern border at the end of 2003, beginning 2004, there was more demographic pressure. Already, with the locals, there was high demographic pressure with fuel wood. And now if you add the pressure exercised by the refugees, they cut all the wood for fuel wood. So we have to face this challenge and breed new plants every year. We have to plant 60 to 80,000 plants a year. We distribute that in all the camps in the Kobe department and in the villages surrounding the camps. So our policy is to ask each household to plant at least one tree per household. So here you have the Prosopis joliflora. It's a very fast-growing tree, and it doesn't need a whole lot of water. Within 2 or 3 years, if you do it well, it grows high, it produces good biomass. You can already use a few little branches for cooking, for instance. This is the nursery side here. Our aim this year is to grow 80,000 plants, all kinds of species altogether, mostly trees and fruit trees. For the fruit trees, we have not had enough seeds this year. Nevertheless, we have planted mostly forest trees. Explain to these people about your nursery with the different species. I'm Luc Patalé. I'm the head of the nursery. This is the 2008 planting season. We have about 100 different species of trees. We are waiting for more pots because we have the dirt. What kind of trees are you planting? We have guava tree, acacia trees, and prosopis trees, and acacia from Senegal, and Manifera indica. How many people work here? We have 2 teams. We have the A team that works in the morning. They are here for the plants, and a B team. The B team puts the dirt in the field. So these are waiting in the villages. They're waiting for the pots to be ready. But we're going to start with whatever we have. Do you have any water problems? Sometimes, yes, we have a source, and sometimes the people who are giving us the water are not coming, but normally we have no problem. We have a water reserve that is not too far, and we are paying people. This is the workshop where people build solar ovens. Here's the material that is used for the construction. It's cardboard, aluminum, And here you have tables on which we cut out the solar oven. All these women are refugee women, and they have understood and learned the technology to build solar ovens. The material is being prepared. The cardboard that you see here is part of it. We put a layer of glue, and then you spread the aluminum on top of it. You dry the material. It's already well prepared. You see that the aluminum is stuck to the cardboard, glued on the cardboard. How long does it take to make one oven? It takes about 30 minutes to build an oven. It's not a whole lot. It's quite acceptable. So then, once you've prepared the cardboard, once it's dry, you put it on the cutting table. You see my assistant here. She's measuring the cutting lines. And so you draw a shape for the oven, and then you cut it. Now, when this is finished, the oven is going to a second stage. So she's folding it up, and she's going to put holes so that it can be fixed, and so that the wind is not going to blow it away. Then you fold it back together. Once the holes are made, it's folded, and the solar oven is ready for use. Now we're going to show you how we use it. That's how you install the oven, the solar oven. Has to be prepared. You have to capture sun ray, and you have to use the sun rays 100%. The inside of the oven is made up of aluminum, so all the rays are concentrated in the center of the oven. And the kettle is painted black. You all know that black paint absorbs heat. So all the heat is concentrated in the middle. And so very quickly you can prepare your tea. The boiling time is a function of the intensity of the sun rays. So the hotter the temperature, the quicker it goes. When you take the kettle out of the oven, you put the kettle in here. In the cotton, this is a thermos carrier. So the kettle is put right here, It is protected with cotton. And so it's going to keep it hot for a very long time.
There is some commerce going on in these camps. I mean, if you plunk 20,000 people down anywhere, they're gonna spontaneously form, however rudimentary, an economy. And since people can move in and out of the camps and even go back into Darfur, people bring goods into the camps, and a fairly sizable market has sprung up in Iridimi. Probably accounts for, I don't know, 10% of the area of the camp. You've got 100 or so little stalls where refugees will sell soap and soft drinks and do tinkering with tools and machines and things like that. Sell SIM cards for phones. It's what the aid groups call petite commerce. It's not big stuff, but it brings some goods into the camp and gets money flowing between refugee families. If you need soap, the World Food Program, for instance, had a soap shortage in Iridimi. So the only way you could get soap in Iridimi was to go to the market and buy it yourself, rather than waiting for World Food Program to give it to you. Without U.S. funding, the humanitarian crisis would be completely unmanageable. American donors, both the U.S. government via the State Department and USAID, and American private donors account for the biggest source of aid donations to Chad. The numbers are hard to come by because nobody tracks all of the private donors, but the State Department has contributed $600 million in the past couple years, and all told, foreign aid to Chad has been valued in the past 5 years at $2 or $3 billion, probably around half of which is American money. Iridimi, it has both an external support system that CARE provides, but in addition to that sort of external support that's provided by the UN and by aid groups, you have an internal organization to every camp. If you look at these camps from the air, they look pretty much like villages in eastern Chad. In fact, they look like bigger versions of eastern villages. And with the exception of that external support that they must have, simply because of a lack of resources, they function like villages. There's a camp president who will organize committees of camp residents to take care of internal problems and to send representatives to the committees where the refugees and local residents work out problems like access to water. To an extent, internal security is handled by camp residents themselves. I mean, they sort of police themselves. They have rules. So it's kind of a hybrid operation of a traditional self-governing African village with this layer of external administration that's necessary because of the lack of resources and also because of the security problem. The Chadian government provides gendarmes, military police, to form kind of a loose cordon around the eastern camps, a very loose cordon because people can move in and out pretty much with impunity. So I mean it's complex. The camps increasingly function as villages. The problem is they cannot be self-sustaining. There's just no water, there's no wood, and there's this ongoing security problem which dictates the presence of foreign troops. And no, there's no prospect of these refugees going home anytime soon. If anything, more refugees are coming.
If you have comments or questions about C-SPAN's international programming, please email us at international@cspan.org. And you can watch this or other C-SPAN programming on the Darfur conflict by visiting our website. Just type the word Darfur into the search box in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage. That's at cspan.org.